morning. Welcome here
to another Sunday morning with Paul
and Angie Wagler
from AriseNow.ca. Yes, well, we are delighted to be with you here once again on a Sunday morning and to be able to share this time of looking into God's Word and seeing what is in store for us as we study it today.
That's right. We've been looking at the fear of the Lord, and we've been doing a study here, and this is the last week. I think it's number 8.
Yeah, probably. Somewhere around there. It's been going on for a while, in other words.
Yes. So we've been looking at 3 questions.
Yeah, the first little bit we were seeking to answer the question, what is it?
What is the fear of the Lord?
Yeah, and then we were looking at how do we get it? If it's this wonderful thing, we should know how to acquire it.
Right.
And so we spent some time looking at that.
Or is it a wonderful thing? We talked about why it's good. And now we've been looking at the third question.
Yeah, which is the fruit or the evidence of it in our lives.
What is the fruit and evidence in our lives?
Yeah, and so we're not going to spend much time reviewing the things that we've done because that would probably take half the show. And so we want to encourage you, if you've missed some of that, to go back and check that out. Best to go on YouTube because I think appears that some of the shows are missing from Facebook.
Right. So yes, and while you're on the Arise Now YouTube, if you haven't subscribed, hit that subscription.
Yeah.
Help us to get on up to 1,000.
Yeah, that's our target. Well, and beyond, but
beyond 1,000 and beyond.
Yes.
Anyway,
so the fear of the Lord, the fruit of it that we've looked at is that there's wisdom and knowledge in our life, that it causes us to hate evil, turn away from sin. There's a number of times the wording is used, shun evil. They feared the Lord and they shunned evil.
Right.
And then the one that we looked at last week was a 2-part one, is that it produces protection and provision in our lives, and it affects the way that we speak and relate with other people. Mm-hmm. And then today, the last fruit that we're going to look at is that the fear of the Lord produces honor in us towards the authority that's over us.
Okay, or probably just honor in general.
Well, honor in general, but we're gonna speak a bit about honor in general, and then we're gonna dive a bit more into this whole idea of honoring authority.
Okay.
And so I have written a book that will hopefully come out in the early part of next year, and it's called 5 Healthy Habits of the Heart, and one of those habits is honor. Mm-hmm. And so I have spent a bunch of time reading about honor, thinking about it, living it out, seeking to kind of build it in my life as a healthy habit. And so John Bevere had written a book called Honor's Rewards, and in that book he defines honor in this way. He says it's a valuing. It's placing value on something. And so anything that we treat with value, we treat in a special way. So that's an honoring of it. He also says it's esteem, favorable regard, appreciation, and respect. Mm-hmm. And then he also says in that book something that I've really pondered a lot. He said it's sometimes helpful to look at the opposite of a word to understand better what it means. And he says, so dishonor is the opposite of honor. And what does dishonor mean? Well, Dishonor is to treat as common or ordinary. So that's the exact opposite of valuing something. Mm-hmm. You know, you think of the things in your home that you value, that are precious to you. You keep them in a safe place where you know just where they are, and they're kept in a place that they're protected. And then the things that you just treat as common or ordinary, it's kind of like the mail, right? You get the mail. It has, you might get a letter or a card from somebody that is just, that was so nice, and you value it. So you put it on the mantle. You keep it in a safe place. And then we get this other kind of mail that we often refer to as junk mail.
Well, I don't know if that's exactly, because that is the opposite. But when we think of something that's common and ordinary, well, I guess it's common and it's ordinary, but it usually just ends up going into the recycle
Well,
bin.
yeah, it's something that you don't value, right?
Right,
So you don't
yeah.
treat it as special.
Right.
And
I'm thinking about bills that come to, they go into a special place
Yeah.
that need attention.
right, yeah.
But
And
they
we
maybe
do.
don't have the same.
Well, you do value them
you do
because
value
if you
them.
don't pay them, there's a problem, right? So they
Yes.
do have a special value.
So they do, yes,
Yeah,
you do.
yeah.
You know, you might not. It doesn't touch your heart the same way as
Right.
perhaps that letter that had some special meeting that came,
Yeah.
or an invitation to a special event, or
Like
something.
a wedding invitation or something,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
So then it's also good to note that true honor originates in the heart. And so it's, I like this passage in Matthew chapter 15, verses 7 to 9, where Jesus is speaking and he says, "You hypocrites, Isaiah was right when he prophesied about you. These people honor me with their lips, but their hearts are far from me. They worship me in vain, and their teachings are simply rules taught by people. They're merely human rules," right? And so I think of times, Angie, when we've been in a worship service, right? And our hearts, for me personally, I'll speak for myself, not for you, but there's times where I've been in a worship service and my heart just hasn't been in it. And I'm singing the song, it could be like, whatever, pick a worship song and you're singing it, but your mind is somewhere else, your heart is somewhere else, right? And that's what Jesus is talking about. These people honor me with their lips. They say the right things, but their hearts are far from me. So what God is really after is our hearts. So that's why, I've written this book, Healthy Habits of the Heart. It's like that honor is something that's to flow out of our hearts. So there's a consistency and a congruency between, our mind and our mouth and our heart. And they all line up in a straight row, right? There's consistency there. And so that's what we're talking about with this whole idea of honor, that it's not just something that we would say with our lips, but it would be something that actually flows from our heart. And so that brings us to this whole idea of honoring authority. And maybe this would be a good time to read the passage from 1 Peter chapter 2, starting in verse 13. This is a really interesting passage.
Okay, 13 to what?
Well, I think you could read to verse 17 for now, and then we might go down a bit further yet after that.
Submit yourselves for the Lord's sake to every authority instituted among men, whether to the king as the supreme authority, or to governors who are sent by him to punish those who do wrong and to commend those who do right. For it is God's will that by doing good you should silence the ignorant talk of foolish men. Live as free men, but do not use your freedom as a cover-up for evil. Live as servants of God. Show proper respect to everyone. Love the brotherhood of believers. Fear God. Honor the king.
Right. And then maybe read the next verse, 18 or 19 maybe. Yeah.
I'll keep going.
Yeah.
Slaves, submit yourselves to your masters with all respect, not only to those who are good and considerate, but also to those who are harsh. For it is commendable if a man bears up under the pain of unjust suffering, because he is conscious of God. But how is it to your credit if you receive a beating for doing wrong and endure it? But if you suffer for doing good and you endure it, this is commendable before God. To this you were called, because Christ suffered for you, leaving you an example that you should follow in his steps. He committed no sin, and no deceit was found in his mouth. When they hurled their insults at him, he did not retaliate. When he suffered, he made no threats. Instead, he entrusted himself to him who judges justly.
Okay, I think we'll stop there. That passage is just
It's full of a lot.
very thought-provoking. And so a number of years ago, when I started teaching on this honor subject, so probably 4, 5, 6 years ago, I don't remember exactly when it started, I memorized Romans 13, which is the beginning of it is about, submitting to the authority. I memorized Titus chapter 3, which is begins with about being subject to the rulers and authorities. And then I memorized this passage in 1 Peter 2. and I've been pondering them a lot in light of all of the events of recent years, where many people have struggled with the decisions that authorities have been making. And in light of all of that, I want to suggest to you that when we fear the Lord, there is going to be one of the products, one of the fruits of that in our life is that we are going to honor the authority that is over us. And so in that First Peter passage, in verse 17, it says, show proper respect to everyone, love the family of believers, fear God, honor the king, or honor the emperor, as some of the translations say. And, when Peter was writing this, the emperor at the time was an evil person who was doing horrible things and persecuting many Christians, and it was just a horrible time. But yet he did not speak out against the king or the emperor in any of the writings that we have. It was more like, let's honor him. So what is honor? Well, it's a valuing, it's an esteeming, it's an appreciation, it's a respect. And it doesn't mean necessarily that it's always obeying, right? I mean, because there were times in the book of Acts, right, where they were, the apostles were taken into prison, or they were beaten because they kept preaching about Jesus, and then they were told, you must stop speaking about him. And they said, I'm sorry, but we can't stop speaking about him, right? And they didn't speak badly about the authorities. They didn't dishonor them, but they also didn't obey them, right? So I want to suggest to you that if we have the proper attitude in our heart of honor, that we can honor authorities and still, where there's times, and we need to carefully decide when these times are, but there are times when we can disobey them. Because you can actually obey the authority and have dishonor in your heart because you're grumbling about them the whole time that you're doing what they said that you should do, right? And that's not good either. It's kind of like what Jesus just talked about in that passage in Matthew 15. These people honor me with their lips, but their hearts are far from me. And so we want to have this consistency, this congruency between our mouth and our heart. Yeah. And that goes back to, that's how we get saved, right? Mm-hmm. It's in Romans 10:9 and 10. But if you believe in your heart that God raised Jesus from the dead, and you confess with your mouth that Jesus is Lord, you shall be saved. For with the heart we believe and are justified, in the mouth we confess and are saved. So there's this consistency, this congruency between our heart and our mouth that lines up, and it brings us into a place called salvation. Right. And so I want to suggest to you that there needs to be this kind of consistency in us as it relates to honor and the words that we speak. And so the words that we speak, I find that is a big evidence of what's in our heart. I mean, Jesus spoke about that. Yeah. The heart speaks, I think it's Luke. Well, it's in Matthew 2, but it's in Luke 6, 35 or 45. He says, for the heart speaks... What the mouth is... Or no, the other way around. The mouth speaks what the heart is full of. Yeah. And so, if you're wondering, is there honor in your heart for authority? Listen to the things that you say about those who are in authority over you. Now, there's different kinds of authority, which I'm not going to get into all that this morning. That's going to be more detailed in my book. But just real quickly, there's 5 healthy habits of the heart. There's governmental authority, right? There's which is like a civil authority. So that's like the government of our nation. In the province we live, there's a government. There's a local government here in the city in which we live and where you live. The fire went out again. Oh dear. So there's those types of authorities. Then there's also authority in your workplace. If you are not the boss, you picked a different fire. We have the ability to choose fires here. If you're in a workplace and you're not the president of the company or the top person, then you're under someone else's authority. And how do you respond to them? How do you speak about them? And even if you're the president or the CEO or whatever word there or whatever title you were given, you're probably accountable to a board or to somebody else, right? So we all come under authority, even apart from the government, right? In our workplaces, and then there's church. There's authority in the church. There's authority in the family. The parents are the spiritual authority in the family. And so in all of these situations, we want to have honor in our hearts towards those in authority over us. It says in Romans chapter 13, verse 12, it says, chapter 13, sorry, not verse 12, it's chapter 13, verses 1 and 2. Let everyone be subject to the ruling authorities, for there is no authority except that which God has established. The authorities that exist have been established by God. So that tells us that God has established authority, but that doesn't mean that all authority is godly, okay? Right. But they all have been established by God. And then it says in verse 2, this is a really key verse I want you to think about. Consequently, whoever rebels against authority is rebelling against what God has instituted, and in doing so brings judgment on themselves.
Say that again.
Consequently, this is Romans 13, verse 2, whoever rebels against authority is rebelling against what God has instituted, and in doing so brings judgment on themselves. And so we want to be very careful about that whole idea of rebellion, of rebelling against authority. Now, that being said, there may be times in our life where we can't obey exactly what the authorities are asking us to do. But I want to suggest to you that we can still always have a heart of honor towards them. And one of the ways that, let me just mention that verse in 1 Peter 2. It says there about submitting to every human authority for the Lord's sake. And it says, for it is God's desire that by doing good, you should silence the ignorant talk of foolish people. And it says, live as free people, but do not use your freedom as a cover-up for evil, right? And so these are just incredible verses to ponder and to see how they impact us in the times in which we live today, and how we can put into practice the words of Scripture and doing it with a heart of honor in our heart. And one of the things that has really helped me to have a heart of honor towards all of those who are in authority over me is because I follow this instruction from 1 Timothy chapter 2, verses 1 and 2. I follow this regularly. And it says this, I urge you then, first of all, to offer prayers, petitions, intercessions, and thanksgiving for all people. Then it says, this is verse 2, for kings and for those in authority, so that we may live peaceful and quiet lives in all godliness and holiness. And so I have committed every day for many years that I regularly pray for those who are in authority over me in the government, in my workplace, in the spiritual areas that we are, we're part of a ministerial group, and pray for those, and for various places where I am under someone else's authority. I pray for them that God would bless them, that God would give them wisdom, He would bless their marriages, bless their families, and just pray wonderful things. And there's a twofold blessing in that prayer. And one is that, the first is that you're blessing them with good things, and that allows God to move in their lives and to work in them and to give them the wisdom and the discernment that they need as we pray for that, right? And the second blessing of praying these kinds of prayers is that it changes my heart, because you can't pray these prayers sincerely for those in authority over you if you have dishonor in your heart. And so watch the words that you speak, because as I have grown in this and the healthy habit of honor has grown in my heart, I intentionally seek to never speak negatively about those who are in authority over me. Okay? So that's a challenge sometimes, because I don't agree with everything in my workplace. I don't agree with everything in the government that's going on, right? But how am I going to speak about it? There's ways to speak about things that we disagree with that still comes from a heart of honor, right? So where we still are treating those people as valuable, and we're still honoring them, we have an appreciation and a favorable regard for them, right? And so the fear of the Lord in us, as it grows, it's going to produce this heart of honor in us towards those who are in authority over us. And I want to encourage you in this journey, because it's beautiful how we can be a blessing in every situation, even with those that we disagree with, because we function from a heart of honor. I have an opportunity to speak to the people in my workplace who are over me and to tell some of them, that I pray every day for you, because I'm commanded in Scripture to pray for those in authority over me. And I know that has been a blessing for them to hear, even if they don't even really believe in prayer, right? Or maybe they do, maybe they don't, whatever, that doesn't matter. It's still that we can be a blessing because we have this honor in our heart. Angie, let's conclude with this verse. Proverbs 15 verse 33 says this: wisdom's instruction is to fear the Lord, and humility comes before honor. So wisdom is telling us, fear the Lord, let's humble ourselves, and then walk with honor towards other people, and honor then can be bestowed on us as well, because we are giving it out. It's the sowing and reaping thing, right? Yeah.
Very good. Very good. Well, I hope this week that you give honor and honoring those in your life and those in authority in your life some thought about how to do that. And if you need to change the way you think about some things or change the way you speak, do it. Do it. Start that change. Start that transformation in your life, because wisdom instruction is to fear the Lord, and humility comes before honor.
Right. That's a good word, Angie.
And until we meet again.
Yeah, stay awake
and stay alert.
Thank you for joining us for Sunday Morning with Paul and Angie. You can find Arise Now on Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube. Remember to like, follow, subscribe, hit that notification bell, and leave us a comment. And more resources are available on our website, arisenow.ca.